Humans of the cardboard, today we are looking at our Pile Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck tier list. Pile decks are one of my favorite decks in the game. Essentially, it's just like an amalgamation of multiple different engines, types of cards thrown together, but still have cool synergies. And then they make like their own actually good deck when they're combined like that. A lot of Pile decks end up being like type based, so like different types of monsters, plants, dragons, some of the best ones we've seen, which are really good. But I don't know, it's one of my favorite style of decks because it just brings so many things into question. I think there's more variation to deck building when it comes to building decks like these than just like standard super focused archetypal decks. As well as like some of the fun things of like doing research, finding different cards that have synergy that, you know, you may not have expected. These are the types of decks that tend to have more stuff like that come up than other standard Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks. So, these are the piles I have here. If I miss anything on this list, throw it in the comment section down below. I'll check the comments and I'll throw out where I might rate different things there. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. If you can see my tiers, we got nice. These are the pile decks that already are like really solid in the game. They don't really need much, in my opinion, really for a while. They're just really well set up. Solid is like they're a playable deck, but they're not nice, so they're still solid. They could still use a little something, but don't need it. Then you have the stuff that just like aren't real decks, really, or fully. You have crazy potential decks that like feel like they're so close, but they just don't have that piece that pulls them together. Mid potential is kind of like crazy potential, but just they would need something wild, but they have a little bit of stuff going for them. And then does not exist is just there's really not much going on there at all. It was some of the types in here that I ended up with. I pulled out of them and I'm like, wow, this type really doesn't even have enough to make like anything a little bit going on. And I just have those in here. We'll throw those in the DNE that does not exist tier as well. So let's get into this thing. Let's jump right into it with Atlantean Mermails, water good stuff, I guess. This is an interesting one because so many of the pile decks on this tier list are going to be like straight dragons, you know what I mean? Straight plants. But this is one that combines usually aqua, sea serpent, and what's the last one? Fish. Those are the three main types, and they all kind of combine into one solid amalgamation. I would put them right now in crazy potential. I think they're too fragile, especially with losing stuff like Hulk. That really took some wind out of their sails. I think they can do some stuff right now. There's an argument they could be in solid, but they're so... One, they're fragile to interruption, so hand traps even hurt them going first, and they definitely don't play that well going second. I do, however, think they have a ton of tools. Moulin Glacier, Neptibus, you know what I mean? There's so many engines. They can take advantage of Ice Jade now, Frog Engine, Mermail, Atlantean, Deep Sea Diva. They now have Click and Echo coming out somewhat soon. So, like, there are some insane tools that can take advantage of. It just is not there yet, but it has a ton of potential. Plants are nice. I mean, they really are. I mean, we're seeing right now that, like, arguably the, like, Rika Sun Avalon deck, which really is just plant good stuff, is, like, arguably, like, borderline tier 1, tier 1.5, floating around that range. It's a really solid deck, and it's been proving that as of late. Psychic. Man, I don't know, like... I don't even know whether to put Psychic in mid potential or does not exist. I know it doesn't exist. It's not a real deck to just play Psychic good stuff. They have some cards. E-Telly's really nice, but like not a ton. Not so much else, to be honest. So I guess I'll put them in mid potential. They really need a lot to be able to. They would need like multiple good archetypes that kind of have good synergy together to get there, but we'll put them in mid potential. I'm not sure if anything will be in does not exist. Pyro decks in general. You know what? I'll put Pyro decks in does not exist. There are very few cards that even have that are good that need generic Pyro stuff going on to like actually make a deck. And two, the volcanic stuff is like fine, but that's like now like the only somewhat respectable Pyro archetype in the entire game. So they would need probably multiple Pyro archetypes to combine here. I would put him in does not exist for right now. It's just like Pyro good stuff is just volcanic, so it's not really a pile. All right, reptiles. I think reptiles are crazy potential. Some people may argue it's mid potential or it's even just like a playable deck right now, but it's not good. They feel like they have some really insane tools, though. Snake Rain. Reptilian Echidna is a crazy link, too. The Reptile stuff have access to ending on stuff like the Alien Link 3, which is just like a walking skill drain. Absolutely brutal card. It's actually more like the Buster Blader fusion in terms of the way it floodgates your opponent. It's a really strong M-board piece. So they have some things. I think the Ogdoadic engine is respectable. I think there's a couple of other cool cards for them. I would like some other main deck stuff that feels a little bit stronger, maybe some stronger extenders, as well as a Link 2. They need something that replaced what Verte Anaconda was. Because I messed around with this deck a little bit when Verte Anaconda was around. It really helped the deck end on more than just the Link 3 alien play. And until they get something to kind of like fill that role, as well as maybe some other tools, they just have a lot of potential cards that are solid. Okay, next up we move to Rock. I would say Rock, I guess I could put in solid. I think Adamancipator is a playable deck. They do have really good potential. It's just no Block Dragon is brutal, to be honest. They were in there at their max with Block Dragon. But to be fair, we've seen this deck get some regional tops over the years since Block Dragon's been banned. So I'm not going to call it like not a real deck yet, but I think solid's a good place to put it. They would really appreciate some new Rock cards, but there are a lot of decent Rock cards, surprisingly. Spellcaster is crazy potential for sure. Definitely over Reptiles. I don't know if I'd put it above Atlanteans, though, because Atlanteans really do have or water stuff has a ton of cards. But still, crazy potential. This is a deck where I would say right now it feels like it's not even a deck. Like, yes, you could play Dogmatica Spellbook kind of deck, and it's like, okay, I guess that's kind of like a Spellcaster mismatch. But it feels like there's a missing piece here. There's a missing link. It doesn't feel like a full-on Spellcaster pile deck, and I do think at some point, whether it's Magistus support or some other new Spellcaster archetype, there are some really insane tools. The Spellbook engine is really good, could be huge. The Dogmatic engine is probably the single most powerful piece they have right now as far as like making these archetypes fit together. We'll see what happens with Magistus. I even think Witchcrafter is kind of interesting. A lot of Spellcaster decks will play a ton of spells anyway, so Witchcrafter could be an interesting version as well. There's a lot. So I'm going to keep my eye on it. It's one of the ones that I think like all it needs is like a little bump, like the right synergizing piece, and we're off to the races. But until then, we're chilling with crazy potential. Thunder, man, I guess I'd put Thunder in like mid potential. I know they have some cards, and by some cards I mean it's mostly like Thunder Dragons. You could also throw in the fact that like Sprite is mostly Thunder monsters, so even just as a generic engine that puts Thunder bodies on the field, like that could come up down the line. But they're so far away, man. It feels like they would need crazy Battery Man support or a brand new Thunder archetype that just actually has Thunder synergy. Like, that's the thing, right? Is even though Sprite is probably the best Thunder archetype of all time, it has like no actual effects that give synergy to Thunder, like specifically. So it really doesn't synergize too much. It's fine. Okay, Warriors. I don't even know where to put Warriors right now because there isn't really like a played Warrior like pile deck right now. So it's either just like the absolute max of crazy potential, or you put it in like nice saying like people probably aren't exploring it right now, but like if they wanted, somebody could easily make like a really good Warrior deck. I don't know. Maybe we're just talking about Infernobles if we're talking about that, but that's not really a pile deck. I do think when we saw like Dark Warrior in the past, though, that was a good showcase of where Warriors could go. I think with Isolde and the myriad of insane Warrior monsters we have in the game, that you have to put this one in crazy potential for sure. All right, Worms. Worms are definitely nice. No, I think right now there's around plants. They're very close, but maybe a little bit lower. I think very simple. Sword Soul, Tenyi, Yang Zing. That's all you need to hear. It's a really good pile deck. We're probably going to see Denglong see a little bit of play here, at least people trying it out, and it's really cool. I think it's a pretty solid deck. It's cool. I don't know. Zombies going solid. They have a lot of potential, I think. They have that same problem that I worry about with stuff like Lightsworn, where it's a graveyard-based deck. They have like a lot of cards that want to be in graveyard but are not great to draw, and they have some cards that you don't want in graveyard that you want to see in hand. It makes for kind of a bricky experience overall for the deck in certain scenarios, but I do think it's pretty solid. I would call it better than Adamancipator right now, honestly. They have some cool tools. You can play it as a more combo-y variant. You can play it as a more control variant. They have a lot of really good tools already set up. So when we get the next zombie archetype, we'll definitely have to look out for where we're going with that. Tri-Brigade. Tri-Brigade, again, is another solid one. Tri-Brigade. This is just Tri-Beast. So this is Beast Warrior, Wing Beast. We'll put this in nice under the Sword Soul, under the Worm pile. I think it's a cool thing. I think just the strongest thing about this is every single time going forward when we get a Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast archetype, we immediately are going to look at Tri-Brigade and be like, how good is that? How good is that? Is that worth it? And that tells you everything you need to know. They are so well set up. They have multiple variants. They've had multiple variants over the last couple of years. It's a good one. Okay, Earth Pile. I still think there's some good potential here, but I think the biggest thing with the Earth Pile, I wanted to throw it in here because it's actually one of the more played decks in the OCG right now, but they have 3 Block Dragon, they have that Grass Looks Greener, so they have more tools to take advantage of it, but I do think Vernisylphs are still like really crazy inherently, so, maybe we could see something come up, but it does kind of feel like Block Dragon is that thing. Those 2 cards specifically, Block Dragon and that Grass, because they just get you a million resources on their own. This deck doesn't really have a payoff like that going forward at the moment. So it's cool. I still think the Vernisylphs have potential, and the fact that they just work with any Earth attribute like monsters in the game, but it's not there yet, and we'll see. All right, this is the Ritual pile decks. This is like Mikanko, Libromancer. You still play like Illusion of Chaos type decks. I'd put it at the top of solid. It's a solid deck, but it's just power crept. It's just not as good as the other piles in the game and a lot of the top decks. It's still cool. I like that this exists. That's how ritual decks kind of evolved. But it's just not good enough. It has a lot of generic tools, but the mechanic of ritual summoning is like inherently worse than most of the other mechanics in the game. Ancient Fairy Dragon. This one I think has crazy potential. This is like the field spell pile deck. It's just not been messed around with a ton right now. Because we're still I think a lot of people are waiting on like Revolution Synchron in the next set, and that could open up more opportunities. But between playing like all the field spell searchers in the game, as well as stuff like Destrudo to get you to Ancient Fairy Dragon to search you extra field spells, this would just be a combination of like 2, maybe 3 to 4 different like field spell using decks. We saw a deck like this a couple years ago. It was like Subterror, Trickstar, Invoked. It was just all the best like field spell engines in the game, and then you would use like Ancient Fairy Dragon to like get you the next one and keep just churning into the different engines. It was really cool. I think the new version could be just way faster and more potent. I'm really curious to see what people go with it. We just haven't seen enough yet of anybody messing around with it. Cyberse, I think, is like the very top of solid. I don't know if I'd put it in nice all the way. It seems like a deck that has too many weaknesses overall. Nib, Droll, stuff like that. But I do think it has maybe one of the highest ceilings of any of these decks. It struggles versus a lot of the defensive tools in the game. Still really good, though. I put it in solid for sure. Maybe even nice if I really thought hard about it. But we'll leave it in solid for now. Dinosaurs. I think dinosaurs are really good. I'd put them in solid right up there with Cyberse. Again, these are borderline nice, but I have to draw the line somewhere, or we just have a bunch of nice decks and then like few in solid. So yeah, I think I would rank these around here just right now. Dinos are weird because they don't even usually play that many archetype based cards in their deck. They just play random good dinosaur cards that just have great generic dinosaur effects. Stuff like Oviraptor, stuff like UCT, right? Fossil Dig. But I'll still call it a pile because you do still play stuff like Pankratops normally, and now we're seeing Transcendrakes get in here, so I'm going to call it a pile. Dragon Link, this is the premier pile deck in the game. There are so many insane tools. There are so many insane search cards. This deck is incredible. It can go for really hard combos, or it can go play a mid-range game with seals and bestials. I respect this deck a lot. It's the premier one. Fairies. Fairies are interesting. I'm going to put them in mid potential. I think they have a good amount of cards, but I don't know if they're enough to really put them in crazy potential. In fact, I actually want to move reptiles down to. I think mid potential, I think, fits them. When I look at the decks above them in the tier above, I have to bring them down a little bit. Fairies have a couple of tools, right? Diviner of the Herald. The Agent engine is quite good at like just putting fairy bodies on field and getting a couple of different payoffs. And the last thing I would say is like Trick Stars are an interesting engine as well. Especially, I mean, I've been promoting Trick Star support for a while. If they actually got it and it was, you know, it was a support where it kind of supported fairies generically, there's something there. I don't know. There's some stuff for sure, but to make a full-on fairy pile deck, it feels like we're a little bit further away than the decks that are up here for sure. So I'm going to put it in top of mid potential, but they do have some strong tools. Fiend pile. I'm very excited for this one. I would put this one right now. I would put it above Field Spell, under Spellcaster. I think the overall potential for this is a little bit lower than these. But I do think with the new Unchained support, they may go into solid also. Like, we haven't seen enough of it yet. I haven't seen, like, the OCG's only had these cards a couple of weeks. We haven't seen too many people messing around with it like that. And then I want to mess around with it and really see where it can go. But the new Unchained Link 2 really feels like it ties together a bunch of Fiend decks. Any Fiend deck that can really just put 2 Fiend bodies on the field now has access to the Unchained engine, which is really cool. So I'm excited to see where we can get with that. But yeah, there's just a lot of potential there. It needs to be delved into. It's just so new. Not exactly sure where this will go from there. Bee Troopers or insects in general, I guess I'd put them here, maybe just around zombies, a little bit above zombies, but probably below that, like Mikanko ritual pile. They're cool. They have a ton of tools. And I think they're 1 card away. So that's why they end up in solid here. They are 1 hieratic seal, but for insects, away from, I don't know about being like top tier 1, top of the meta, but like they have a lot of similarities to Dragon Link. And if they just had that mid-rangey tool that if you're bored, if your plays get interrupted, you can still end on that. Or if your hand is just kind of mid, you can end on that. It doesn't have that safe play. It's either all or nothing in the deck, it feels like. And yeah, that would be a huge type of support for them that would skyrocket them in the tiers. And the last one here we have is Earth Machine. This one I actually think people are poo-pooing right now. But I do think with the Super Heavy Samurai engine, even after the banlist doesn't really hurt the Super Heavy Samurai engine in this type of deck, because you would usually just play Wakushi, like a little Wakushi engine anyway, and go from there. So it really doesn't hurt us that badly. I really like it. I really want to put it like closer up here. I legit think it's like closer up here than people realize. I just don't think people want to give it the respect because they're like, oh, it's just bad super heavy. But now super heavy is bad super heavy. So what are we talking about here? So yeah. That's where I end up on everything. Those are the pile decks I had in my list. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you have any other pile decks that I didn't mention here that you thought were worth throwing into the mix, let me know in the comment section, and we can try and give some ratings to those if they weren't in here. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the list. Let me know what your favorite pile decks are as well, and what you hope for the future for some of these pile decks. But I'm out of here for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching as always. Subscribe if you want to see more tier lists down the line, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.